DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation. Command your legion, claim your legacy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's AMA with DeFi Kingdoms. Lovely to be here, as always. We do have a little bit of a smaller stage today, as we've got some people out traveling and a couple out under the weather as well. But we have Hubert, and, well, he's the main person for the AMA anyway.
You got me. Sorry, guys.
How are you doing today, sir?
Not too bad. I saw the chart of divine essences minting and burning that somebody had posted recently, and that was pretty cool to see. It went all the way up past 70k in supply and dropped down to 20k over the course of a couple of days. So seeing a lot of that get eaten up, and I see it jumped back up some more. There's been more burning that's been happening, but that initial thing was mostly a bunch of multipliers getting eaten up, and so I think a lot of those are now gone. So I'm curious to see how this is going to evolve, but definitely cool to see that. I think that the feature is working pretty well. But anyway, yeah, pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited to be here and excited to watch a couple fights today, since we don't have Winston. Dragonfly Tales and Mellow Fellow have agreed to do our AMA bouts today. The first one is kicking off any second now, and then the second one will be coming up a few minutes later. There are sponsorships on both of those, so make sure you get in there, vote, sponsor, do all of the things. And keep in mind, as always, anybody who sponsors will get entered into Winston's giveaway, which will happen once he is available. But he always makes good on it. So, yeah, make sure you get in there and at least vote and get some of that sponsorship. Which, speaking of Mellow Fellow and Dragonfly Tales, if y'all are in the audience, if you could send me the links for those fights when you get a moment, that would be lovely as well. If not, I'm going to see if I can't pull it up real quick. But anyway, I say but anyway, as if I am not going to need a second to organize myself. Let's see. Sorry, guys. My bad. I forgot that I unstaked all of my recruits so that I could go burn a bunch of them for Divine Essence, and then I couldn't vote on the match, so I was unprepared. Yes. All right, there we go. We are good to go now. So let me get this screen share popped up, and we'll get back on track. Benefits of the live show is you get to see us figure things out sometimes. All right, we're in. Let's do this. Anyway, where were we? So let's see. We found out how Hubert was doing. We talked about the AMA bouts. One other AMA related update that I wanted to give is next week our AMA is going to be on Wednesday. So it will be on Wednesday, June 11th instead of Thursday, June 12th. Winston will actually be hosting. I will be the one traveling this time. So congratulations, you'll have an upgraded AMA experience with Winston hosting next week, and then the week after that I'll be back. So yes, make sure you keep an eye out for that, and then moving forward we'll be back to our regularly scheduled Thursdays. And then for some other updates, I am going to pass it over to Hubert to talk about a few things that are all intertwined.
Alrighty. Let's see. So we had the release of yesterday. We had a new release. We just released 3 new chests. There was an issue with the lost chest, I believe, where it was not being able to be opened yesterday, but we did get that fixed late last night. So if anyone encountered that and was still waiting, you should be able to open that now. But that was a in response to duels coming to an end. So yesterday was the end of duels in the game, as far as how it has been to this point. There will not be any new seasons, and we're kind of taking the rewards that were in there and redistributing them to other parts of the game. So the chests that you receive from patrols, from hunts, and also from the daily skirmishes starting tomorrow, those all are including kind of a redistribution of those rewards. It is actually like until the raffles are ended, which will be in 2 weeks from now. It is actually like potentially slightly an increase in inflation for a moment, but it kind of depends on how many people are getting those chests and opening them. But as soon as the those raffles are ended, then it'll be kind of like fully redistributed, because the portion of those raffle rewards are also like considered within these chests anyway, is my point. And we also do plan to have the number of winners that you can get from the shell raffles be increased as well once we start turning off the raffles on the other realms. So you'll be seeing more winners from the shell raffles as well in the coming weeks. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, just remember, if you do have any raffle tickets, you only have a couple weeks to use them. So I would recommend using them, because they won't have any utility after that point. So go out there and try and win some things. And let's see, were there other things that I am not remembering, Bolon?
Nope, I think that's it.
Nice. Okay.
For now. One last update, and then we will move into questions. I wanted to give a shout out. The Eternal Echoes first tournament is on Saturday. So this one is hosted by the Eternal Zenith Guild. It is a 32-player tournament with some pretty stacked prize pools in there. So definitely make sure to check out that tournament and participate if you are interested. But it should be a lot of fun, and I just wanted to highlight that. And anytime that anybody has some hosted tournaments coming up, let me know. I'm happy to mention them here in the AMA as well. But really looking forward to this first Eternal Echoes tournament, and shout out to Eternal Zenith for putting it on. Should be a good time. All right, let's move into some questions. We're going to start off with a rapid fire series of questions related to the new chests that we introduced last night. So are we doing a bonus period of increased drop rate?
No, we are not.
Are the chests part of the retroactive rewards that we have mentioned before? And if so, will they be retroactive?
Also, no, these are tied directly to duels rewards. So this is a new thing, not tied to the retroactive rewards we've talked about before.
Cool. Are the chests a replacement for the current drop tables or an addition?
Sorry, say that again. I was reading what SPD said and got completely distracted.
Oh, good. Are the chests a replacement of current drop tables or an addition to them?
They are an addition. Yeah, nothing else has been reduced or anything.
Awesome. Will the banded chests, which are the tournament reward chests, be rewarded in the consolation tournaments?
No, that actually has to run on the skirmish.
All right. Will there be any chests for the patrollers tournaments?
Currently no, but we'll take that into consideration for next week.
And can chests be used for hosted tournaments, maybe for a fee or power up?
So if this is asking if like we would let hosts mint new chests, then the answer is likely not, just because these we do want to keep the inflation of the rewards down. So we kind of have already done an analysis on where we want kind of the number of chests to, like how many we want per week and everything like that. So if we were to add that, it would kind of mess everything else up as far as how we'd plan things. So I don't see us really doing that.
All right. Does luck play any part on whether a chest is found in patrols or hunts?
No, these ones are fixed drop rate.
Does luck influence the odds of finding anything in a chest?
Also, no, you don't use a specific hero to open the chest. So,
all right. And that was all they could think of for now. Thank you.
A lot of good questions.
I think that was Sir Worm. Thank you for the well thought out list there, covering all of the chess topics. All right, very different topic. Do you feel that poison is strong enough in the current combat system for PvP specifically, and in particular after the introduction of burn and chill?
A good question. So I think with poison, especially in PvP, what happens is that most people just cleanse it right away. So I think it does act as like a control mechanic, because it does force the other player to do something about it. And if they don't, it will get bad. And it doesn't really go away on its own, doesn't expire, besides like if a lucky recovery happens. So I think I don't think I'd want to make it much stronger, because I do think it's pretty effective in PvE already. And if we made it stronger, just make it even more effective over there. So we can consider other things about it, but I think in general, the reason why it's not very strong in PvP is because everyone is afraid of it and is removing it as quickly as they can. So yeah, I think if you can keep them busy with other things, I think that can happen sometimes where they don't really have time to cleanse or to use like a potion, or maybe they don't have any potions left. But yeah, I think that mental deterrent, the turn, kind of forcing them to take a turn in a specific way, I think that poison works really well for that purpose anyway.
Awesome. Let's see. Gonna give you a momentary break. Have we ever considered teaming up with DBank and Robbie Wallet to potentially collab? Asking has recently switched to Robbie, and it seems very well designed. We would love an intro. No, I know a lot of y'all have been switching over to Robbie and had very good things to say, which is awesome. I don't think we actually do know anybody over there, but I can find out if we know anybody over there, and if not, we can look for an intro and see if there's something we could do together. All right, back to you, Hubert. Question from a strategic angle: could it make more sense to focus on long-term engaging PvE content next, instead of new classes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as far as like what we're planning to do, we're kind of doing a mixture of those two things. Like we are working on both PvE content and new classes at the same time. But like to just say, okay, no more classes for a while, we're just going to focus specifically only on PvE. Yeah, I don't know. I think that when you get new PvE content, like it doesn't change which classes can be used, right? It's still using the same classes. And so players that have a lot of those classes that haven't been implemented yet. Whoa, that was a weird sound from you. Yeah, so players that don't have those classes, like, or that have a lot of classes that aren't implemented, they're still waiting to be able to use them. every time we add a class that is basically changes all PvE content, all PvP content, because suddenly you can do all those things in a different way. So I think that the impact of a new class is pretty large. Like, it seems like Wizards really changed things a lot since it's come out. And I have the more classes we can get, it makes the game feel more complete. It makes it easier for when new players come in. They don't need to know, oh, only buy these classes because they have skills. So I think that's a pretty big problem to solve for. And I don't think we should put that back on the back burner at this point. But we do have PvE content that has been being worked on for quite a while. And I'm excited to be able to get that going. But yeah, I think we're gonna probably be juggling the two things more often than not for the next while.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And yeah, sorry about the noise. My computer just completely spazzed out on me. I don't know what's going on with me today. I'm going to have to restart it after this, I guess. It's probably been 6 months since I restarted it last time, so that might be the problem. I'm a responsible computer owner. For community-hosted tournaments, would it be possible to have a chest option for them to use where they could put their own stuff in the chest, but it be a surprise? Like what came out.
Right. So that wouldn't work with the chest that we have right now. I could see a contract that would allow you to kind of generate a new chest ID that has specific rewards in it, and then you just basically give that contract the rewards so that it can give them out. Kind of the problem with that is, I guess they'd have to always be guaranteed rewards, so it'd be less of like a random chest than more of just here's a batch of rewards for you. So I could see that happening. I don't know that we would be spending our resources building something like that ourselves. Like it is something that a community member could make, for example. And I guess to make it completely secret, there really isn't a way to have it be completely secret, because if someone could just go look at when those chests were created, they could see the transaction where all of the rewards were fed into it. So yeah, it would require a little bit of sleuthing, but you would be able to find it. There's not really, not on, at least on our chain, a way to do that. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. And if somebody wants to try to tackle that, our tournament system would allow any ERC20 or 1155 tokens to be used. So you could potentially set up one that works that way. I just don't think we have the resources right now with what we're currently prioritizing to do something like that anytime soon.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Similar question, or similarly related, would it be possible to add the ability to offer equipment to second and or other places in tournaments without massively upping gas costs?
Yeah, good question. So second place would probably be not too difficult to add as something that you could reward. When it gets beyond second place, when you need to reward, to 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 or more players, then it gets really tricky, because each piece of equipment or hero or whatever it is, the NFTs, they each have their own unique ID. And the way the reward system right now works is it kind of just treats a tier of rewards as kind of a blanket thing, where if there are 8 winners, if the winners are each getting a chest, it just knows it needs to have 8 chests. But if it's 8 weapons that all have to be the same weapon, we would need to have 8 different IDs that it saves for each of the positions. It needs to know, okay, this ID goes to this position, this ID to this position, and a whole bunch of extra stuff. So it's very complicated once it needs to go to giving it to more than a single winner. which first and second place both are single winners. So I could see us potentially adding second place easily, and maybe doing it in a way where it's not going to really drive up gas costs. Like it likely will cause some pain because our especially on the creation side, those contracts are pretty close to full. And so anytime we add something, we have to kind of find ways to reduce the size of the contract without like losing any of the functionality that's there. And you can only do that so far. And at some point it will become just too big. And then we have to split the contract. And then just the gas cost for creation has to go up as a result of that. So, because once you start splitting contracts and have to do like external calls, it does add a decent chunk of extra gas once you do that. So, yeah. So anyway, possibly for second place. Anything beyond that, probably don't want to try to tackle that because it's a huge rework to make it work.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Any thoughts on a new summoning dynamic where you can hire 2 Gen Zeros to summon together with both hired Gen Zeros?
So yeah, when we first made the summoning system, it was kind of important to us that we wanted the players to have some skin in the game as far as when they summon, so that they did have to have at least one of the 2 heroes that are used. Like without that, it could mean that really everyone has access to Gen 1s, to creating Gen 1s. Whereas right now with the way it's set up, you have to have a Gen 0 to be able to make a Gen 1. That's the only way. So it would be weakening in a lot of ways, I think, Gen 0s to do that, and also kind of creating a different dynamic than what we had intended. And I don't think it would be a better dynamic personally. So I don't think we're going to change that.
Awesome. What is funding the daily influence reward system, and in its current state, is it costing the team anything to maintain giving those rewards out?
So yeah, no, it's not costing us anything. I mean, there was an initial amount put into the Coliseum fund. And then every day, like that Coliseum fund, like 0.2% of its balance will be distributed to influence holders. So because it's actually percentage based, it's not really possible for that to go to 0. There's always going to be, the amount that gets distributed, if nothing were going back into it, would like get smaller and smaller every day. But we do have like any fees that are happening on Metis for entering tournaments or for summit or leveling up, or early withdrawing from the influence system, getting your banner, breaking your pledges with your bannerman, like all those fees, a portion of those 30% go into that fund. So I haven't been like keeping close tabs on it, so whether it's trending up or trending down, it really just kind of depends on where the balance is. Like if nothing were to change and the same number of people always joined every tournament, like there would reach a point where the 0.2% coming out would be equivalent to the 30% coming in from all the fees. So it really just kind of depends on like how much activity we have. The more activity, the larger that fund will get. And then that means the larger the daily amount goes. If the amount of activity happening is lower than how much is giving out, then it'll eventually reach kind of a balance point as long as the activity remains consistent. So it's kind of it's a reactive formula, and it does kind of depend on activity. So it should be able to sustain itself. It's just like the Quest fund, which also sustains itself and works in the same kind of way, where its balance is either going up or down based on how many people are gardening, versus like how many fees are coming in from like summoning and other things.
Awesome. So with the release of Hero Transcendence, are we anticipating the difficulty of void hunts to be increased to compensate for power creep? And do we foresee reaching a point where players should expect to need to re-roll their heroes? Like, even if they're not PvPing, say they're PvEing.
Yeah, good question. I think that's a good question, and I can understand the concern. Like right now with Void Hunts, it is possible to win with just all common heroes that have never been rerolled or anything. So like the bar right now is, common heroes. Like it's not as easy as if you have higher than common, but it's very doable with common heroes. So yeah, with mythic heroes that have been rerolled a bunch, I do think it's probably gotten a lot easier. Especially with like the HP increases we've seen. I think what we probably right now, I don't see us like just directly increasing the difficulty of the hunts in just a blanket way like that. I do have plans that for something that would increase the difficulty, but I'm not going to go into the details there yet. I think in the future, though, what we would likely do is like if we release new hunts, there may be hunts that we just design around a higher power level so that maybe common heroes won't be able to do them. And those ones will be for those that have the more powerful heroes that are able to actually tackle the challenge. So I think that's probably how we'll do it. Try to keep a place for common heroes to still be able to have their place, and then also somewhere where only the cream of the crop heroes are even able to succeed as well. I think it'd be kind of what we would do.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Let's see. On the topic of hero transcendence, would it be possible to add an estimation of minimum and maximum divine essence and greater divine essence over all of the heroes queued up, like in the queue screen?
I think it could be possible. I think with that, it would be something that we'd need to see if Zipper wants to try to tackle it. I'm not sure how difficult it would be to do that. But it may be possible. I'm going to leave it up to him if we do it or not, because we have a lot of things we're working on. But I know like when you're finished, you do get it does kind of accumulate all the rewards that you ended up with at the end. So there is that. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be easy enough for him that he can kind of knock it out over a couple days. But if it's going to be kind of a bigger lift, probably just have him keep focusing on durability.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
My voice is not as good as Styx interns. Noted. Dragonfly Tales. Thank you.
Dang, harsh words coming from the chat. Which congratulations on the first match for Dragonfly Tales. The second match is starting here in like 3 minutes, unless they can't early start because it's sponsored. So it's starting in about 3 minutes, and we will pop that one up once it begins. But congratulations, Dragonfly Tales. Who I believe is going to be joining us at the end of the AMA as well. Yes, for all of the stuff in chat, yes, we'll talk about Whirlwind. We're going through questions as we do every week. We'll get there. So anyway, anything you can share in terms of a medium to long-term outline of plans for tournament formats, especially regarding total stat limits, in particular with Divine Essence now out so that heroes can be re-rolled, and how we see that playing out and impacting the field?
Yeah, good question. I think with the stat limits, especially with Divine Essence being out now, we will be seeing a power creep as far as what the kind of average stat score is for heroes, especially the more competitive ones. And the stat score limiting system was kind of intended to try to force people to use the less powerful heroes that they might have, and something where smaller wallets would have a little bit more of a chance, because they could use, if they didn't have the resources to re-roll their level ups multiple times per level, that they would have a place to play too. So I think stat limits in general are an important thing. Obviously we still want people to join tournaments, and I think a lot of the stat limit tournaments we've had recently have not been running. So we are looking at that. I think probably for like where the level is 20 or 15, we probably could increase the stat limits on those a bit. For like 10 and below, I think those are generally in a decent-ish spot. Maybe we'll tweak them slightly, but between levels 5 and 10, your stat growth is you haven't had that much time to like really be growing your stats too much. And also I think for those lower levels too, it's also for the smaller ones easier to get into it, just because getting to level 20 is it is a big effort, and if you want to do it quickly, it requires a lot of resources, or you have to just buy a level 20 hero directly. So, and that generally is more expensive too. So yeah, I think for the purposes of trying to just increase the playing field for different types of players, I do think they're still useful. And yeah, I guess any feedback we have on specific limits, we do listen to all that feedback. I think it's sometimes the feedback sounds a little bit like I have this specific team of heroes that's really good and I want to win with them, so set the limit so I can use them, and that isn't what we're going for here with these stat limits. So yeah, so anyway, I probably you'll see some changes, especially higher levels, but yeah, I think we're still going to use them and see how they go.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And the second match has begun between Dragonfly Tales and Mellow Fellow. Let's see. Any conceptual progress on a hero renting market for PvP?
Not really. Not too much progress. I mean, we did have kind of two different concepts that have been sitting there for a bit. I think one of the concepts, both of them, I think they could work. There's one that I think is a little bit simpler to how it would work, which would just be something where like people could have their bannermen be basically up for rent, or have teams up for rent with even potentially like some potions to go along with it, and then people could just take those teams into private matches or potentially even tournaments. So yeah, we do have that concept kind of all laid out, I think, at this point. Just it was something we hadn't prioritized previously, and now I think we're going to need to see, if it makes sense to kind of prioritize doing that now over some of the other things we're finishing. So if we were to, I think it's still going to be a little bit out if we did, just because we got durability really close, we have pet combat bonuses really close, and
Don't give away all the alpha.
I mean, people know those ones are close-ish. I mean, it's not like next week or anything, but they're getting close. So
I just didn't know what else was coming,
right.
Any thoughts on adding a it was described as a nuke patrol button, which I actually like, but if a patrol gets stuck or something like that, a way in the UI to just clear it out?
I guess it depends on like how it's stuck. I think we had kind of talked about a way to, like, if it's something where it's actually been completed, but it's just still sitting there in your menu. we had kind of talked about a way to clear those out before, and they still do happen, and it still takes up a little bit of Beetle's time. So I think there's still a desire to fix that. So yeah, I think there is probably a way for that one. I think there's some other instances of how things can get stuck that may not be as clean as those ones, but I'll bring the topic up again with Beetle. He's pretty focused on the next class right now, though, so it's kind of, we'll see. But I'll bring it up with him.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Do we have any ideas to share of what lands will be used for in the future?
Yeah, so with lands, I think the main thing that we've mentioned in the past has been to facilitate crafting, where we do plan to have like, in order to craft, you have to use the facilities associated with your crafting. So if you want to do leatherworking, you need to go somewhere that has like a tanner station, something like that. And lands would be a place where those things would be built. But beyond that, we do have the travel system where basically everywhere where land exists is considered kind of a region. There's different regions that you would need to travel to actually access the land. And when we have that system, we can start to kind of have each region kind of have its own kind of little mini story about it. And like, there might be a time where a region gets attacked by a bunch of enemies, and like the lands that are in that region are affected by that until the enemies are defeated. Or if the enemies aren't defeated, then the lands are, will have kind of a drawback for a while, and potentially even needing to be like repaired, things like that. Also having other types of buildings within the land, so like where you could receive benefits, or maybe a certain building even needs to exist for a certain thing to, like, a fight to be available or anything like that. Like, there's a bunch of different ideas that we have, and I think a lot of them we want to do, but really kind of making the lands kind of a hub of economic activity, and a place where you need to go for a lot of different things in the game, and places that you need to protect as well, and try to help develop along with the landowners, just so that everyone's benefits can increase. So that's kind of the general idea there. Lands are still pretty far out on our like roadmap, so we haven't really put much energy into like fleshing out and getting those design details into an implementation state. We're not quite there yet.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I'm going to give you another break for a moment. Can we get an update to the docs on hero stats? I believe that strength plays a role in blocking, for example, but if we could have combat stats and what stats contribute to them, that would be helpful, even if the formula isn't disclosed itself. I'll just say that in general, there is some attention and love that we are intending to give to the docs. We just need to get some time to do it. But there's something else that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and now I can't think of what specifically it was that we needed to update in the docs. So there's a few docs updates that are pending. We just need to get a little bit of time to do it, and a lot of times that is Zipper that kind of stewards the docs. That said, they are open source, so if anybody else wants to contribute, you also can contribute. Obviously, you can't contribute if you don't know the information. That's fine. But in general, if there's anything that you want to see in there, you can also submit requests. And yes, it is coming up to time for a new priority list. So stay tuned for that as well. We're close to time for that. All right, going back to you, Hubert. The luck stat states the higher the hero's luck, the more likely it is for a hero to land a critical strike. Luck also slightly increases chances to find rare items during quests and plays a small role in evasion. Does luck affect other things such as summoning rarity, divine essence generation, etc.?
So not those two things. it does not. Yeah, the summoning's a pretty straightforward system, and it's not impacted by anything other than the genes and I guess the rarity of the hero. The but yeah, luck does have more than just evasion and critical hits, though. It also does. I'm trying to. Where is that tab I'm looking for? I have way too many tabs here. There it is.
It's probably what's making my computer freeze up, but I'm going to blame your tabs.
Let's see. Also, it impacts status effect resistance. It impacts your recovery chances, impacts block and spell block, as well as then there's just a luck score as well. So yeah, there are 4 other things combat related that it does do that was not mentioned there.
Cool. A couple of longer term ideas that we're curious if you have any thoughts on. A PvE experience that isn't winnable, but there is a leaderboard for who survived the longest, killed the most enemies in a single run, that kind of thing, and you can just kind of keep playing it to try to climb that leaderboard.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I guess if it was like endless waves of enemies kind of idea, and you just stay in the same fight the whole time, and they just keep populating in. That could be an interesting mode. We haven't really been. Man, you got your echoes again. Okay, I think it's done.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Let's see. So, is there anything more to say there?
About to throw my head in the trash.
So yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. We'll consider it as something that we could potentially do in the future. I do think that could be fun for a lot of players. So.
And then similarly, a hunt that continues to adjust in difficulty, for example, each week or each month, to see who can still beat it. So it's, the same hunt, but every month it gets harder and harder and harder, and you see who can continue to be able to win that hunt.
That is a cool idea. That's starting to touch into something I mentioned earlier, but it's different than what the thing I mentioned earlier was. So you might see something like that. It won't be the same like that as far as if we go with what I'm planning for, but there will be something kind of like that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Actually, it's probably not the last question, but next question, and I'm just going to kind of open it for you to talk about whatever you want here. But what is the team's philosophy on balance changes? And specifically, let's be honest, they're asking about the whirlwind change. So whatever you want to share on that front.
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm sure not all of my thoughts are going to make everyone happy. But yeah, I think, one thing that we saw with Warrior and Whirlwind in particular was that the daggers, and in particular the first Squire dagger that had the 1.5x additional multiplier on the critical hits, they were very, very effective in the hands of a warrior, to the point of being with Whirlwind kind of problematically effective, where we could see, it's not like a guaranteed win, but it was a pretty high likelihood, especially at lower levels, for Whirlwind to, like, if you did a triple Whirlwind team with those daggers, you had a pretty high chance of winning. Like, it wasn't balanced anyway, and really it wasn't an intention that dagger should be the target weapon of warriors. It just kind of worked out that we didn't design them, especially those first ones, in with like enough testing. I think it kind of got overlooked that they were even going to be a warrior weapon, or should be tested as a warrior weapon, and so it kind of got released into the wild as is. We tried to at least like reduce the critical hit multiple, or like the multiplier on the critical hits on those right away, but those daggers are still out there. So and that wasn't just like the Squire's daggers either. I believe it was on all 3 of the lower the daggers that you could get from the gold shop, and we changed them all. So there are some at level 6 that also have that multiplier, and also at level 3, I believe. So yeah, it kind of created a problem as far as like balance is concerned. And it also thematically didn't make very much sense that if you're like spin through a crowd of people with a tiny knife, that you're doing more damage than if you're spinning through a crowd with a giant axe or a giant sword. So like the flavor of the skill also was not making as much sense. So with the changes we made here, switching it to be all based on the attack of the weapon and not having stat damage, that made it so like basically the more attack you have, the better your whirlwind is going to be. And with where we set it up with the balance, it does do slightly less damage with like one-handed swords and maces than it used to, but for two-handed swords and axes, it does a little bit more damage. So it is better now for when you're using two-handed weapons. But with daggers in particular, because it's only attack based and there's no extra stats going into it, it makes it so like whirlwind is not going to do very much damage with the dagger at that point, because really the damage you were doing wasn't even the dagger's damage. It was your strength and your luck, or I think your dex and your luck were doing the damage. And quite a bit so. And I don't know if you've seen other balance changes we've done in the past for other classes that haven't been, I mean, I guess they, anytime we do kind of a bigger nerf, it always kind of gets some people unhappy. But like we've done this before too, where there was a lot of stat scaling and not a lot of attack or spell scaling, and we've switched it to be the other way around. And generally it is to make it so that things can stay within a more appropriate range of damage. And weapons, their ranges, that how much attack they can get, how they get their attack or their spell, like all of that is defined and has limits. Stats are more unbound, like there is a maximum that you can get for a given level, but they are more unbound, and that stat damage actually does more in the beginning, between like these first 20 levels than they would in the future, when we get to like increasing the level cap at level 30, level 40, 50 and beyond. The stat damage is going to be far less impactful than what the attack damage or spell damage of your weapon is going to be, just because we're with the way HP scales, like we need the attack to go up higher with those weapons to kind of keep pace. So that whole strategy of doing strat damage with stat damage with attack damage, like in general, I think I'm trying to tone that down and switch to something different that can stay more balanced as levels increase. In the case here, we did, it essentially did make it where, like before, that level 10 dagger was like the strongest weapon for warriors in some ways. Like if you look at average damage over time and you had him doing critical hits, like it was better than Excalibur on average. It was better than the level 12 weapons as well. And that really shouldn't be the case, I don't think. We only changed one skill though also, so that's another thing. We changed one skill, and now everyone's saying that warrior is broken. If warrior's good, it was only based on one skill. Like what I hear when I see people say that is that warrior was not balanced to begin with, if it just has one skill that is kind of the linchpin to like it working. So what that means to me is that other skills probably need buffs to kind of counteract that. But really, it also has only been a day. Yes, it is going to make the Dagger Warrior experience not as good. But again, if Dagger plus Whirlwind was the only strategy there, that wasn't a very balanced scenario anyway. Like if really any of the other skills that Warrior has not useful with Dagger, then yeah, that's not the kind. I don't know if I have the right words to say it, but it's not it's not the way it should be. So Yeah.
And
Anyway,
just to clarify on the first part, so daggers in particular are going to feel this more than other one-handed weapons also.
yeah, dagger, because daggers have like their max attack is pretty significantly lower than even like swords or maces. Like because now whirlwind just looks at attack, it's a pretty strong impact there. Like it's not getting to amplify your dexterity and your luck to do a whole bunch of extra damage like it was doing before.
Gotcha. So comparing dagger to dagger is going to be a bigger difference than comparing dagger to one-handed sword. And then obviously if you go into two-handed, it's actually better.
Right. Yeah, and my intent with dagger is really it's supposed to be used for its utility, which maybe the daggers we have right now don't have that, but once we get thief out, then we can really have a class that's designed around dagger. Ninja is also a class that's going to be designed around dagger, so they're going to be designed to be fast, designed to have a lot of tricky things that they can do to debilitate the opponent, but and probably have some good attacks that can, when lucky, do a lot of damage. But the key thing with the dagger is that it makes you fast, and then it gives you more turns in that way. And it's very difficult to balance around speed and damage and everything else. So this was a move to kind of address that. There was a lot of complaining. I don't know if you guys. It seems like now we're getting kind of the opposite response now, but there was a pretty vocal pushback against dagger warriors before this change. Now there's kind of a pretty vocal pushback against the change to address that, which I get. Especially those that were using that strategy. I get it. It sucks to have your strategy get taken away. And maybe we'll adjust things back again. Balancing is a forever thing, but I think this at least puts the intent of the design of weapons into more of a place that it should have been in the beginning anyway.
Awesome. One quick question, actually a couple things, but one question for you. What goes into attack?
Attack is just based on the formula of the weapon equipped. So there's the base score that it has, and then they typically have one or two, sometimes even three. I don't think we've created any that use three yet, or maybe there's one. I think there might be one. But they have multipliers on them. Like it might say like 0.8 on strength, and so it also adds in your strength times 0.8 to the attack up to like a maximum amount that you can gain from the strength. If it has more than one stat, then it might be like strength and dexterity, and you can get like an extra 15 from dexterity if you have a certain amount. So it still is stat based. Like attack still scales off of your stats, but it's like what that weapon wants. So you kind of need to look at each weapon, and as we release more and more weapons, I think we're going to start seeing more interesting varieties. Like maybe we'll start releasing some weapons that scale some damage off of luck. I think we have at least one now that does that. I think the Rip Fang does, if I recall correctly. But we could see, in the future, as we get kind of closer to like hybrid classes, like Spellbow, for example, seeing bows that have intelligent scaling on them. We also have already introduced some great swords that have intelligent scaling damage on them as well, kind of anticipating things like the Dread Knight and the Dark Knight. Yeah, I think, by being clever with weapons, I think we can also kind of give heroes with specific kind of stat focuses, an edge with using a specific weapon. And, we haven't really gotten that far into doing that at this point, just with the amount of weapons and whatnot that are out.
Awesome. I'm going to say one thing, and then if you want to add anything to it, feel free. And then I have one last question for you, and we'll go into our wrap up. There's been some talk as well of like, why do this after Divine Essence? Balance is forever. Like this will not be the last balance change. New class comes out, there's going to be more balance changes. There's going to be balance changes to existing classes. The Transcendence being released can't just lock in balance forever. That's just not a functional method. So like, yes, it just came out, but it doesn't. There's no time frame related to that. Realistically, they're two separate things. Balance will always be happening. All right. So if you want to add anything to that, feel free. But one last question for you. Was it considered to remove daggers from being able to be used by warriors?
Yes, it was considered. I was kind of pushing for it for a while there, but SBD over there, I'm gonna blame him. He's listening. He really likes that the warrior can use all the weapons, and he's bothered that they can't use even more of them. And I so anyway, we had a discussion and ended up deciding not to do that. But because dagger exists, we do have to be very cognizant of its like effect with warrior in particular, just because warrior, like the warrior skills are all meant to be kind of bigger hits that come from the weapon. And with if you can have a critical hit that does 2.5 times damage, or actually no, it's like three times the normal damage. Suddenly you can start getting into one-shot territory, and it actually kind of creates a problem in the other direction. Like it makes it so we can't make their attacks as strong, or we just have to like really strip out any stat scaling so that it's just attack based, so like at least the attack of daggers won't get high enough to like let it be as big of a problem, which is kind of what we're seeing with Whirlwind here. So it does create a very unique balancing challenge for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Hubert, for answering a whole slew of questions today. Very much appreciated. We are going to move into our wrap up. We do have Dragonfly Tales here with us. Just real quick, as always, thank you to everyone who has tuned in live. Thank you to everybody who will listen to the recording later and those that will read the transcript. As always, you can submit your questions at talk.defykingdoms.com or the AMA questions channel in Discord. Thank you, Hubert, for taking this hour with me and just having a whole mess of questions thrown at you. Very much appreciated. Thank you to everyone in the community who is always so passionate. Whether you agree or disagree, you're always passionate, and it is very much appreciated to have people who care as much as you guys do. Yeah, I think that's everything that I have. I will miss you guys next week, but I will be back the following week. So don't get too attached to the Winston hosted AMAs. And Hubert, any final thoughts?
Just really happy with how things have been going with Divine Essence. It is a huge shift in the game. It is going to change a lot, and we're going to have to kind of let the dust settle. And we don't have everything out yet. We have durability still coming. So, like right now, I think the Greater Divine Essence demand is a little bit lower because of that, since a lot of the Greater Divine Essence usage is going to come from restoration of equipment. So there's still kind of more to come once we get to that point. But it's balancing a game and building a game in real time and adding things to it. And there's really a lot that we have to do. Not every change is going to be well received. But if we go too far with something, we can always adjust in the other direction if it seems like it's not, if the move was too far. You can just, the meta is just going to always be shifting. There will be people that will be happy. There will be people that will be sad. I hope you can just understand the perspective as like a game designer. Like, we have to make these decisions and we have to keep moving forward. And, even if one little shift kind of makes something not as good down the road, we may make a different shift in the opposite direction that makes it, more strategic, maybe not as powerful in HP damage, but in other ways. So just, give it time, let it settle. Let's see how things go. We're going to have more balance changes to come. We have more classes coming. Everything is going to be shifting all the time. That's kind of a part of the fun. And, now that we have the ability to reroll, like, I think sometimes we will see people do rerolls around specific builds. I guess it's possible that specific builds will become less powerful because of some balance changes we made. It's also possible that some builds can become more powerful too. So it's gonna be an ever shifting meta that people are just gonna have to deal with, and that's just kind of the nature of this kind of game. So I hope y'all can understand that and at least put yourself in our shoes and understand that we have a lot of hard decisions to make, and we have only so much time to make them. And we just need to keep pushing forward so that we can keep giving more content to you guys. So appreciate you all, and look forward to seeing you guys start winning those new chests. I've already seen some of them. Looking forward to seeing more.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Dragonfly Tales, congratulations on your victories today. I do not have a stopwatch up on the screen because I'm afraid that it will break my computer, but I have one on my phone. 60 seconds, all yours. Floor is yours.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm very happy I won because I love Mello. Mello fell of my friend, but he joined the Jewelers. So I take this time to say, join Mythic Squad. We are gonna kick enough, and let's freaking go. Bullish.
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 Thank you all, and we will see you next week.
DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation. Command your legion, claim your legacy.